Well, welcome to our first budget workshop.
Let him, I don't know if we're on.
Oh, did you want to?
One second.
Oh.
Just don't go live yet.
Your vest looked amazing today, by the way. I didn't want to get the group chat going too much, but nice choice.
Good to go. Again, welcome to our first budget workshop for our Fort Edward School. Tonight's goal is to provide business direction through transparency and detail. Our topics for tonight will include staffing, estimated salaries, benefits, special education, BOCES, debt service, and interfund transfers. Here at Fort Edward, our staffing includes 3 administrators, 42 support staff, that's full-time and part-time, and 52 teachers. Tonight's numbers projections will be based on historical baselines with a consultation with team and business costs. I want to warn you, some of these numbers look a little scary, but we hopefully through this evening will be able to answer questions. We will explain the different variances that are highlighted in yellow, and whatever questions you have, please feel free to ask. But here are the entire salaries of our school. Here, in this top yellow, at 28% variance. For the administration office, our salary increase was for adjustments and also extra clerical stipend. This looks like a big number, but the extra number with the deputy treasurer was increased from 3 days to 5 days, and that was also because of our historical business continuity.
Chris, sorry.
Yep.
Just for the 28% increase on the administrative costs, I forgot to ask last time we met. Now that is also due to the fact that we added a staff member too. Last year, there was no superintendent secretary, is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you.
So that's also included within the change. That's the 3 different cost allocations there. So you have the deputy clerk, the administrative assistant, and the superintendent, and the stipend for clerical duties. That 10% increase with all cleaning staff is also, again, salary adjustment predictions with a lead cleaning role, and also with what we're projecting with current salary negotiations. And down here, the non-instructional staff at 8% variance. That actually was because the PK teach, it was the PK, or the TA PK. That's our PK, TA, that was not budgeted in last year's budget. And also all cafeteria staff was also not budgeted. What I have done in this budget is I'm going to be as completely transparent to you. Everybody is accosted for in our budget. I will show you in another slide, there are funding streams and grants that we use to pay for certain salaries, but there are no hidden costs in our budget.
Chris, where are the business staff? Like you and Greg?
That will actually be under our BOCES tagline.
Okay.
Yep. So we'll explain that. I'll show that there again. Our next estimated salary slide, we have a 26% variance with non-instructional salary. The elementary secretary was not again budgeted in last year's budget. And it's 100% out of another grant, which actually will then create that dollar change of about $20,000. But I again want to be completely transparent that there are no hidden costs in our budget, and everybody who is accosted into our budget lines are in our budget. There's also longevity. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with that, but anyone who reaches a certain time period of service, for that they get the extra $650 for that time allotment. So there's 1 unit there. Also, this looks very scary to me. and that's 124% change. But again, in last year's budget, 39% of our guidance salaries were budgeted due to 61% from a different funding streams with grants. So it's actually $109,000 that were not allocated in last year's budget, but we are allocating them this year, so that number is actually a decrease in salary. And if you look at the bottom of the totals, it will also give you what we are proposing for the salaries for this budget slide, how many FTEs we are allocating for, and what was budgeted last year, a $210,000 difference. But as you have just heard, most of that we will explain on the slide with grants. You will see the significant decrease in funds from how it's paid.
And if you go back one slide, please,
Yep.
just to make sure, again, the social worker was not in there last year as well, correct?
Good point, correct. You'll see that actually with the zero there for the budget.
Okay,
And there would be, but what happens is when you divide by a zero, it actually is a invalid number. So it will actually be, that is the dollar change difference, but you're right, that was also another position not budgeted in last year's budget.
so if you go, can you go back one slide? Tom?
Absolutely.
Just one more time. So when you say that the cafeteria people were not in there last year, and then I'm just educating myself because I wasn't there. So they were in another funding stream,
Correct.
but because you're working on being transparent, you put them into the total budget line.
100%.
Okay, and then like you said, later they will be.
Absolutely.
Okay, all right, I'm just trying to.
Yep, and when you actually process that, we can go back whatever slides, when we go to that slide, you will see every single person I was mentioning will be on a staff line over here, and you can actually see how many staff were either partially not budgeted or fully not budgeted in last year's budget.
Okay,
So this is like individually itemized.
100%.
Every single, okay,
Absolutely.
gotcha.
Everybody that works here is on this line.
Yeah.
That's why I said to you, I like the way you presented it this
Yes.
way, to go back, so,
So
I
different.
like, I was here this year, so I knew it was for all
Yeah.
the, so I liked it, being presented this way.
I am not about hidden costs, I'm about transparency, and you can see everybody budgeted the numbers that you're working with.
thank you. Chris.
Absolutely. Here's our K through 6 instructional estimated salaries. And again, with that, we have a PK teacher that was not budgeted, and percentages of 2 AIS reading, math resource were funded also from a grant, and the amount of money, which that's the dollar change, 227,000 has come from grants. So what we were truly left here would be about $50,000. But again, fully transparent, that is what our budget costs will be if we didn't rely on budget or on funding streams. We also have 21 full-time FTEs. And under here, we have 4 that have longevity. It's different than support staff longevity is every year. Once you hit that mark, you will make $1,500 extra per year. Credits is based on credits over their degree, and it's each credit is multiplied by 44 bucks. That is how we reimburse, and that's where we get the $1,980 from.
And again, like last year, there wasn't a librarian, I do not believe, correct?
It's, the librarian, I think, was technically in the tagline.
Okay, okay.
It might be significant. I think the previous librarian had more time in, so the monies were a little bit higher. But the big ones were the pre-K was not added in there, and the 2 AIS reading and the math resource were the ones that were not budgeted in our budget.
And again, we get a UPK grant, so like you said, that'll run a different slide. Okay, all right, thank you.
Absolutely. I'm trying to get to that slide. There we go, thank you. And here's the estimated salaries for 7 through 12 instructional. And health teacher was not budgeted, and a percent of 2 English, 1 math, 1 social studies, and 1 music teacher were not funded completely with our budget, but they were funded from different funding streams, mostly the grants, and that was $122,000. So subtracting that, we end up about $12,000 added change to this year's budget. Again, down here, if you want to look at longevity and credits, 3 qualify for longevity, and our credits, again, 15 times 44, you get $660. Here's the estimated salaries for handicap instructional. And the biggest tagline is that our Director of Pupil Services was not in our budget last year. So that was a significant upcharge there. Oops. There we go. That's what was not added. That's why you'll see a 27% increase there. And under the handicap instructional salaries, 5 qualify for longevity. And here is our district transportation non-instructional salaries. And the increase of $26,000 is because we're trying to stay competitive in the market. Bus drivers today are priceless. They are in demand. We all know this. We've seen if any school districts are basically in desperate need for bus drivers. So we're trying to stay competitive. So that's salary adjustment predictions, and it's based on also the current salary negotiations. And I also like to point you to any of these taglines over here. Notice the units have changed. We were actually doing it by hours. So this is actually our projections based on payroll, and that's how many hours each of those bus drivers, part-time, sub-aides, overtime, again, allocated with the projection of costs that we're expecting to pay at the higher salary, per se. That's, I'm projecting higher, just so we aren't going to be under budget. And this is a summary of all we were just talking about. These are estimated summaries of our salaries with different descriptions of each tagline. Our 2023-24 proposed budget, we are at $5,141,377. And again, don't be scared. It's a little bit of a drastic change with the dollar, but that's because not every support staff, any salary was not every salary was budgeted last year, and we will see this now in our slide coming up. This hopefully will answer all of your questions when it comes to monies and where they were allocated. These are our funding streams. Here is all the titles that have been fully funded by grants or partially funded by grants. You will see the salaries of completeness over here at about $1 million total. Here are the general funds, which is the budget that we actually had budgeted for last year. Anything without a number means they were not budgeted in last year's budget. The ESSER and the 611 ARP grants are federally funded and will be gone after next year. I highlighted them in red to give you a cautionary tale on the fact that this number right here, for next year, we can access those numbers so we can kind of offset those salary costs. But after 2014, this will also be on our bottom line. We need to account for that. But these are all the grants and funding streams that are annual. They actually are monies we will be able to tap into. So as Rich said before, we have our UPK. All our cafeteria staff is paid for through the cafeteria monies. And that total is $437,764. So we can actually offset our salary costs with that. And when you combine that number with our 231, our grand total for what we can cost for salaries next year is about $670,000. Which means if you take our dollar change from the previous page, subtract your grand total, we are going to have to cost for $176,229.97 for our budget. But it's not as scary as that $800,000. Our next portion of today's budget workshop are on benefits. This includes medical, dental, retirement, which is the teacher's retirement and the employee retirement systems, Social Security, workers' comp, and unemployment.
Chris, before you move on, can you go back to that last slide?
Absolutely.
Sorry. So the one, so just so I'm clear.
Yep.
some of these totals are projected because we are still in negotiations with some, and you've projected and provided, you know, maybe a little more than we think. Is that correct?
Absolutely.
Okay,
When I do budgets, I try to do projections based on not only what we have for payrolls and what we have for the negotiations that I've been part of.
yeah,
We're kind of doing a high projection.
yeah,
So if we end up landing, this is like worst case scenario with our numbers.
okay,
So I'm projecting slightly higher. If we can land a little bit lower, it will help our bottom line. But when you do budgets, you really do want to project for that rainy day. You don't want to have a budget that's under budgeted, because then if you're not at least accounting for what is going to be charged, we are holding a bag. So this is always helpful to project using the best tools that we can to forecast cost, inflationary costs, all of that. It's all part of the budget process.
okay.
Yep.
And it looks like we've absorbed some of the cost of the new staff and some of the things right in the grants, like I'm looking at the social worker,
Correct.
and that whole thing is funded by
100%.
611.
That was the reason we hired her, because we knew we could do it right.
Yeah.
That was an offset.
Yeah, we put that in
Same way
because-
with Joyce's.
Absolutely.
Back to what the kids brought back from both, we knew it was gonna offset that, so we're not seeing that directly here. But the other ones, that's how we planned that, we knew we had that money, so we could hire them, just like the extra, that's using the money that we knew we were gonna have.
Thank you.
Then let me ask you this, and I'm sorry.
Sorry.
No, it's awesome. No, I love historical stuff. Go ahead.
And the title grants.
Yes.
Are you confident in those, or could they go up or down?
As of this moment, we're not hearing anything of them going up or down.
Okay.
We are projecting what was stabilized from historical. This doesn't look like it's changing too much because that's more of we are in that poverty,
Yeah,
low income.
yeah,
Title II and IV, I think we're still gonna hit what we were last year.
yeah.
It doesn't sound like we're getting anything less than. So
Okay.
that's why the projection is based on what we did receive this last year.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, well, technical difficulties, there we go. And here is our benefits with medical and dental. The big one I'm going to highlight tonight, because it is the biggest line item that has been ticketed, is with our WISHWE Health Insurance Consortium. All of our business people are projecting a 12%. This is again, worst case scenario, and again, it's $1,500,000. And that really is the reason for the gigantic dollar change. We are saying the 12% is the worst case, but we're not getting any indication it's less than that. So we're trying to project higher, but here are, again, the different line items. Because again, some of these were missing in detail. I wanted to be completely transparent to you all that here are all the different costs in the account items. Our dental, our MVP. This will also break it down. We've done a deep dive on the single and family. Also, retiree contributions. That's actually monies we get back, so it becomes like sort of an extra revenue to offset our costs. And that's where we have our medical and dental lines.
Yeah, the problem is with that, wish we were the consortium, when they give us a range and it uses up the bottom of the high, it's usually high. We don't remember ever getting something that was lower than we.
And they did say it's a pretty bad one, because I think
Yeah.
they budgeted badly, or they projected badly, so it's actually hitting every one of us in the WISHWE consortium. So all of us are gonna feel the heat on that, sadly. And here's our benefits, retirement, the teachers and our employees. Again, this has been a deep dive. We looked at every single person who's a participant in each retirement system. And as you can see here, employee retirement is 13.1% higher, 10% for the teachers. But if you go over here with our amounts, what we had last year budgeted for employees has greatly decreased, even though it was a higher percentage expectation. We have about $58,000 less than last year's budget, but we offset the cost of the extra $30,000. So we're actually $27,000 less than last year's budget when we look at our retirement system. Here's our benefits with Social Security's workers' comp and unemployment. Sadly, there's not much leeway here. It's pretty much fixed costs. There's pretty much we're locked into a lot of these We do have to say with unemployment, although we have a history of not really having a lot of claims due to unpredictable things such as COVID and people that had to then lay off, we try to throw some money in there just to offset anything like that, but that was something we did not predict, and we had more unemployment claims based on that situation. But in the foreseeable future, I don't think it's gonna be hopefully any worse than that, but we do have to remember if we're gonna offset staffing somehow, we wanna make sure that is also allocated for. But the dollar change here is 33,902 over last year's budget, with a 7.6% change. And here's our benefit summary. So this again takes every single description over here, our proposed budget with every budgeted line, what was last year's budgeted amount, and the dollar change is $300,000. But keep in mind, the biggest one is that $300,000 almost dollar change there with the consortium.
The number on the bottom right, 12.1,
Yes,
that is the total percentage increase, correct?
that is correct.
Or average, right?
It's including the entire benefits line, so yes, it's a 12% higher.
Gotcha. And all of these in here are basically fixed, right? There's nothing
That's correct.
really negotiation. Okay, all right.
Well, you know, do all these, how much would my, I don't know, passing the retirement benefits might change?
If there's beneficiaries to that, probably not significantly, because there's somebody still receiving that benefit,
Or part of it.
or part of it.
Yeah.
Probably not a drastic.
Yeah, not the full.
That's what I
This
thought.
is what we're trying to introduce.
But again, keep in mind, some of
Maybe
these,
slightly.
Because this is different.
yeah, these are projections, again, maybe we'll see some, but if we even build a little bit higher, it's not a bad thing in your budget to have a little bit over, so we have some wiggle room there, especially if we're offsetting consortium costs. But thank you for that.
Yeah, anecdotal.
Yes. And here's our special education. Again, no hidden costs. These are the anticipated costs to have for next year. We have definitely worked together as a team. Joyce and I have collaborated very well to know exactly what is going to be needed for next year. Looking at our costs, looking at what we've accumulated. A key item here is the Prospect School. She does anticipate 6 kids as of current. I've upticked it to 7 because you never want to have an extra kid that can screw up your budget. So I kind of threw that extra cost in there, but about $50,000 per kid. That total amount is $365,000. LearnWell is another thing we did not usually have in previous budgets, but I still wanted to make sure we had something budgeted for it because we were hit by extra costs. LearnWell is actually for a child that was in a hospital, and it was an educational system that was needed to help them in that process. But again, when we see costs, when we see historical monies that come out of places that we never budgeted for, it's always good to have something tagged for a situation like that where we never predicted that.
I believe that's for when students are hospitalized in for 2 to 3 week stays, and that we are obligated to retain.
Yeah. But with only a $21,594 change, that's I believe it's a significant success, especially with the Director of Pupil Services. There's a lot of benefits to having that position here in our school.
3.3%.
Oh, yeah.
And here is our BOCES. This is a fun one to go through, but I'm here to help navigate this tour. But when we go through on each description, again, we were doing this same way before. These are the different description notes. These are the amounts over here, so you can add those together, you will get that full amount. Tim mentioned, what about anybody who is in the shared business office? That is our line right here. That is not my salary. And here again is what was budgeted last year, dollar changes. And when you realize, when you add up all our BOCES, and again, the 17 students is right now our soft projection at $12,600 per student to our BOCES occupational education. That's just a soft projection right now. We will get that in a fixed one. I think that comes out in a few short weeks. But our total, as we keep going down, you'll see the slides. Some are, again, fixed. This was the Rwanda. If you guys ask again, it's mostly this 11-page formula that is not just a math formula. There's a lot of language to it. But if you just think of it as the resident weighted attendance, so the better attendance we have for our students, our Rwanda has a better score. That means we actually get a higher score with our score. I also, yep,
We're still on BOCES, so.
yes, yep.
Can you go back one?
Go back, yep.
Okay, so, all right, okay, I was looking at the bottom as totals. Now,
No,
on these BOCES slides, there's certain formulas too where we get monies back. Is that correct? So these are the upfront costs and we get our aid ratio back.
That is correct.
Okay, all right.
the aid ratio for BOCES for things that are aidable is 82% for Fort Edward. However, it does not mean you spend $100,000, you get $82,000 back. When it comes to salaries, it's up to $30,000 of that salary. So most of this budget line here, we're talking almost 60% back, not 82% back. So there are some things from a math standpoint to understand the numbers. It helps you understand how to project. But some things are not aidable, so I'll show you the IT slide. Under those codes, some things, even though it's an aidable budget line, it's not all aidable. We have BOCES that will go through each ticketed item and make sure what we can get back, we do get back, but there are things that
The max percentage is 82, sorry.
our highest, yes, yep,
Okay.
82%.
First, you're basing it on 17 students. Do you know what number was off the top of your head from last year?
Last year was 17, yep. But again, that was what we projected to BOCES, that was the soft landing. But it was also, in talking with guidance, they were thinking it's going to be 17 roughly, but they're going to get the hard numbers soon.
Is that CTE? Is that what we're talking about?
Yes,
Okay.
yeah, that's our occupational education through our BOCES that is occupational training.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And then handicap BOCES, is that for one student, or what is handicap BOCES?
Which was the handicap? Okay, yes. That is actually based on those who need that service. So
You know how many students we have there?
that I actually do not know. I can get back to you on that percentage. It's only $15,000 from last year's budget, but that is, I'll get back to you on what per student that is. I don't know if they really drill that down or it's truly another fixed cost that BOCES themselves charges us.
Okay.
Not really sure exactly, but I will get back to you on that.
Okay,
Yep.
that'd be nice.
Here is our IT, computer assisted instruction, and here's our proposed number. Here is every description. I worked very closely with our IT manager, and he's projecting certain things like a firewall. He wants to lease 80 Chromebooks. We're trying to project as we go along every year how to get Chromebooks so that when they kind of die out, we already have new ones coming in. So we, again, can better serve our students. But this entire amount will actually equal to $248,000. It is over budget from last year, but again, I think we are deep diving and we're looking at really what true costs are, because what happened even this year, we have to kind of play around with other monies. We did not budget correctly. We have been significantly tapping into other accounts just to manage our needs IT-wise. So that's why there's a $40,000 increase, because that's actually truer to what our needs are here at Fort Edward. And the rest are mostly explainable. And here's our BOCES summary. And again, I'll look at the handicap BOCES just to get clarity for you all. But our proposed budget is $2,544,000, $29,000 over last year's budget for a BOCES change percentage of 1.156. And our next slide covers our debt service. These are all our bonds. And one thing I have learned that I never learned in business school is for a school business, you must be in debt. You need debt, healthy debt, so that you can accrue monies back from state and federal funds. It is definitely not what I've ever been taught, so this is all new to me. But
You're talking private businesses.
this is how you operate in bad business. But now that it's school, it's fine, I understand it. But this hopefully will break it down, because I wanted to also, in my own clarity, when things don't make sense to me, I try to give more detail so you guys also understand that these are each bond name. So when we had to repay Washington County, that bond has 2 interest payments of $19,750. These are the dates that each one is due for next year. That is our principal payment. Only one payment is due, but that's the date that's due next year. So each bond has its own payment schedule. This gives you the details of that for our interest payment of $213,900 and our principal payment of $755,000. So if you look down here at the description, this is our proposed budget, $968,900. Last year's budget was $975,750. Change actually is $6,850 less than last year. Which is good because we're trying to get ready for a building project, as we all know. This is the kind of way that you do a building project, so when you actually start putting on the lower part of your debt service, we can accumulate more healthy debt to accumulate that debt to help not only our school, but to keep those funds going for us. And here is our inter-fund transfers. I will point out Patrick, who is our cafeteria, BOCES person, has been doing a phenomenal job. And for the last couple of years he's been here, we have not had to transfer any money to him. So the exceptionality of what he's been doing for our school is one of the reasons that I propose we don't have a budget increase for that, because we are not seeing anything in the future that those monies will be needed.
Understand that's unusual.
Absolutely, absolutely. We're very pleased. That's why I highlighted, I'm very pleased to hear that too, because I know how exceptional he is and we're very glad to have him. The special aid fund, just again for a rainy fund, if by chance we have a student coming into our school, this is another area we can kind of play around with. You really kind of want to have some money, again, so you're not under budgeting, because you need to have money to operate our business. So that's our inter-fund transfers. And now I will take any questions that I hopefully can answer, and I will look into the handicap BOCES for you.
I will say what I said before, Chris, this is the most thorough, prepared one that we've had. I mean, the details are there, it saves us a lot of questions, because if you had something, they're there. And pretty much this is, we don't have a lot of wiggle room here, this is what it is. So I appreciate the work you put into the presentation. Appreciate it a lot.
Do you know how significant the assessment, the change with like the assessment, since they just did them all in 2022, how that will change our revenue coming in?
That will be our next budget workshop.
All right, so then I will.
So
look at
the
that.
topics of
So that's
today,
it. Sure.
I will table that for our next time.
Okay,
So
Perfect.
just to remind you, on February the 13th, our next budget workshop will have the revenue update.
good.
So it's state aid forecast, tax levy, tax cap. It is also maintenance, transportation, technology, athletics, co-curricular, equipment, contractual, supplies, and also we will give you an estimated draft of the budget,
Okay.
so you can see the entirety as the whole. But let's table it for next time.
Got it.
But theoretically, there should be, the revenue we ask for is going to be a change, it'll be reassessed because people's taxes.
Right,
change,
right.
yeah.
I just didn't know if it can affect at all.
But in transparency, there is something to do with Irving Tissue and their assessments. It could be lower than we expect, solely because I think some of their parcels have been not assessed correctly. So it could be something from the Washington County office. I know that came this week.
There was
I
quite
just
a
wanted
bit
to
of
bring
drama.
We went through that last year.
Just wanted you guys to be,
We were-
Quite a bit of drama with all that
How was that for
assessments and
so that I
people
just wanted you guys to
resigning
know
and
that
all
I
sorts
that
of.
as well.
drunk.
I looked at them so much last year. They're very thorough, thank you.
And since Tom is here, any questions? You can run through
I'm
it.
sure I will, but, my tardiness, but, I'll save them, I'll get in touch with you if I have.
Absolutely, absolutely.
It's good. that you-
Chris, can you explain where in these lines, like the stipends for club advisors and?
That's extracurricular stuff. That will be in the next budget workshop, because that will be co-curricular. So stipends for anything that are done with working with the school.
Oh, okay.
Yep, that's those timelines.
Okay.
So you two will table your questions, those questions for next time.
And I think you had mentioned this is one piece.
Absolutely, yep, I'll go back to that one slide. This is just a small part, although it's a big fraction. I would say we are, and I've already done a lot of the extra works for next time anyway. I've already had a projection of the budget in whole, but I want you guys to know that, what our real discussion points for tonight are solely based on those right here.
I imagine you've taken the new contract into consideration when you're doing all these estimations.
Absolutely. I work really closely with negotiations. We've landed salaries that are pretty much spot on. So even before we actually signed the contract, our negotiation, by the information I received, our salaries are pretty much locked in. We're 100% on target.
And admin staff, you estimated increases there.
Absolutely. Yep.
As well as, support staff.
Yes, yes, you got everything back to you.
Yeah, my projections are based on what we think are gonna be, so.
Yeah, cool, I look forward to
Any
that.
questions from the audience?
Yes.
Did you wanna, I think you have a closing, I guess?
Oh, I just told them from last time.
Oh, for the next one?
Yes, I can read it again if you want.
Yeah.
So on February 13th, we will be covering the revenue update, that's our state aid forecast, tax levy, and tax cap, maintenance, transportation, technology, athletics, co-curricular, those are our stipends, equipment, contractual, and supplies, and the estimated draft budget. So all our budget, we will actually be able to have a draft for you next time.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, Chris, if you wouldn't mind, once you get this all squared away for the second workshop, to get that to the board again.
Absolutely.
Maybe a little further in advance than this.
I found out from an IT standpoint, though, I might have to pass it to you to
That's
pass it, because there was like because I'm not a technical Outward employee yet, so I don't have those accesses to make it go right to you.
Always pass it to him, if something goes wrong, blame the boss.
No, I don't play that game, but I take my own ownership, but.
I know I said no question, just one more.
Sure.
Did we get any specifics regarding the health, percentage?
We actually, again, let me go to that slide.
You have to point it that way. Because, yep, there you go.
I told you IT is not my favorite.
No, you got it.
I mean, it looks like it is, this is all really,
This right here, Tom, is what you're asking for, that's our Wish We Consortium. The 12% is what they're saying is our high, the one that we, worst case scenario, would land at. So with a 12%, we are at $1.5 million.
What was last year?
I believe it was 8%.
So,
It was a significant upward, that's the dollar change, it's all because of the consortium.
so we were at $1 million maybe?
I would say it's close to $1 million from last year.
So we're 500 over?
What was that?
So we're 500,000 more this year?
No, the dollar change.
294.
This is the dollar change for all of that.
For the whole thing.
Oh, for the whole thing, the dollar change is there, okay, so that was what? So it was close to 1.5?
Yes, and you can see some of these also are what we,
Oh, we're saving money. there.
Yes,
Okay, gotcha.
correct.
Cool. That's not bad.
But again, that's an underestimation by both teams last year.
that's the problem. They underestimated where we would land.
so that, we didn't do that one,
No, that's all on them.
that's it.
Yeah. That's all on them.
But we're feeling the heat from that.
Right.
Around 7%, that's pretty considerable, yeah.
That's huge.
Along with the other 25 other schools that are in the consortium too, so.
Yeah, that's crazy. Cool, all right, one more, so no more questions.
So, just to wrap it up, I'd like to thank everybody who tuned in. Hopefully people have tuned in. So we want to thank you for joining us here in our first budget workshop. I want to thank Chris for all his hard work, wonderful detailed PowerPoint presentation. On the side, we have Mr. Greg Weeks over there, our IT guy. Thank you so much for providing it. I texted a couple people. If you saw me there, I was texting people because sound has been an issue, and everybody says that they can hear us excellent. So it's fantastic. Our next budget workshop, again, we want to reiterate for the third time, will be at the regular board meeting on February 13th. We'll have workshop number 2, and you can rewind this because we found the website for you to find out all of the wonderful items that we'll be talking about on the 13th. And we'll have a small summary of what we did today too.
Also,
Thank you, Chris.
welcome to Grants.
Thank you.
He'll be available.
Yeah.
The one- the one-
We'll see.
Yeah.